money's generally going more digital, but that takes different forms. So, for example, there's open source money like Bitcoin. There's central bank digital currencies that kind of further the control. And then there's like hybrids like stable coins. When we look out longer term, I would expect by maybe late 2024, maybe 2025, we probably have another positive liquidity cycle. And I would want to own, more liquidity driven assets. I think assets like Bitcoin, as well as things like stable coins, give people more choice in either sometimes in developing countries and also developed countries.
When the global financial system faces challenges, Lynn Alden, the founder of Lynn Alden Investment Strategy, highlights the role of digital assets in redefining the concept of currency. The US dollar has enjoyed its status as a global reserve currency since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. According to data from the Bank for International Settlements, the USD has been involved in about 88% of all foreign exchange transactions during the last decade. Cryptocurrencies also offer a way for emerging economies to reduce their reliance on the US dollar. While the dollar has become the global reserve currency for decades, U.S. monetary policy on interest rates and inflation caused volatility in its value that has had implications for individuals far beyond U.S. borders. During the interview, Alden mentioned, "I'm examining the potential directions for the future of money, and it's becoming increasingly digital." She pointed out the existence of open source money, like Bitcoin. Brian Armstrong, the billionaire 40-year-old founder of leading U.S. crypto exchange Coinbase, said Bitcoin should be owned as a hedge against price inflation, while fiat currencies are programmed to be debased. The world's largest cryptocurrency has raced to a $524 billion market value, and a single coin was worth above $29,000 on Friday, just 14 years after its original inception in 2009. The shift towards digitization has prompted central banks to explore the development of so-called central bank digital currencies inspired by stablecoins. Alden mentioned that assets like Bitcoin and stablecoins provide individuals with a wider array of options, and this isn't limited to developing countries, it extends to developed ones as well. Now, let's shift our focus to a video.
I explore kind of the fork ahead for money's generally going more digital, but that takes different forms. So, for example, there's open source money like Bitcoin. There's central bank digital currencies that kind of further the control. And then there's like hybrids like stable coins, which are basically ways for like one country's currencies or assets to pierce any of those 160 different, financial barriers around currency blocks and basically give those people more options. And so if you're living in Nigeria, for example, generally what you want is something, your options are real estate in the local area. You don't want to hold the local currency. The stock market's not as, the capital markets there are not as developed as you're going to get in the US. It's not like you just go out and invest in the S&P 500. And so people are stuck in their not just money silos, but like capital silos, unless they're wealthy enough to have like foreign accounts and things like that. And one thing that technology can do, if we let it, is give people more global competition, more global access to the best assets in the world, rather than be restricted to whatever assets happen to exist in their own jurisdiction. So it increases if people want to hold dollars, if people want to hold maybe the S&P 500, if people want to hold Bitcoin, if people want to hold a gold stable coin, these are ways to, it's almost like offshore banking for the middle class, is what some of these technologies can do. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a big takeaway I have is that there's a fork in the road between either more centralization, basically for a century and a half, we've made the system more and more efficient, but more and more centralized. And we can either continue that path with CBDCs, which I would advocate against, or there's the more open path of actually trying to tie these systems together more, make capital more globally portable and accessible in the more open source way. I think assets like Bitcoin, as well as things like stable coins, give people more choice in either sometimes in developing countries and also developed countries. And I have hope in the sense that one of the work I do is I work with Ego Death Capital. We do venture capital in this area. And so we're basically get to meet founders who are building companies, trying identifying some sort of monetary problem and trying to solve it. And so there are people out there in a decentralized way, saying, okay, here are these frictions, here's areas where money's broken. Um, what can be done to do that? And so when I see people doing work like that, and getting to meet them, that does give me hope.
Fed is burning, surrounded by the words money, futures, and planet. Markets widely expect the Fed to hold off on additional rate hikes. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell acknowledged recent signs of cooling inflation, but said on Thursday that the central bank would be resolute in its commitment to its 2% mandate. Wall Street responded with caution to Powell's statements, but the crypto market reacted positively. The broader cryptocurrency market has surged by 3%, with Bitcoin mirroring these gains. Currently, Bitcoin's price has risen by 3.3%, and it seems poised for a potential move toward the $30,000 mark. Alden foresees the possibility of a positive liquidity cycle around late 2024 or 2025. During this time, she would favor holding assets that thrive in a more liquid market environment. Now, let's shift our focus to a video.
I think that as long as we're still in this situation where the Fed is trying to tighten, um, risk assets have a very mixed outlook. And there's all sorts of things like basically if in the next 8 months we either do have an energy crisis or we don't, that'll obviously affect things. Like, almost every prediction has a Boolean outcome based on energy prices. And so, like I said, I'm increasingly finding tips interesting. I do like gold and Bitcoin as long-term accumulations here. I don't necessarily expect fireworks while we have this tightening situation. Um, and I would be cautious around overall equity exposure. Um, I think T-bills are interesting. I mean, as long as you can earn like over 5% on these types of assets at a time when money supply is not growing quickly. Um, there's this window here where I think that makes sense. When we look out longer term, I would expect by maybe late 2024, maybe 2025, we probably have another positive liquidity cycle, and I would want to own, more liquidity driven assets. Crypto has unfortunately deserved a lot of its bad reputation. I mean, it's, when you bring a gatekeeper down, like if you decentralize media or decentralize book selling and things like that, it opens up doors, but it also opens up a long tail of basically bad products coming to market, right? There's no filter anymore. And this is basically what's happened to securities, where basically anyone can launch like a financial asset and try to distribute them. And so naturally, that's going to be a very scammy, hypey type of thing. But I do think underneath, around at least around the core of it, there are kind of powerful technologies that are worth knowing about. And like I said, I think kind of that Bitcoin stablecoin complex, as well as just the overall kind of development that's happening in cryptography. I just think that there is signal under the noise. It's just unfortunately there's a lot of noise in the space.
The growing adoption of Bitcoin, stablecoins, and other cryptocurrencies in hyperinflationary economies indicates how decentralized digital assets can shape the future of financial systems in times of crisis. Bitcoin can fulfill a dual role as both a store of value and money to buy goods and services, and must replace debased fiat currencies in emerging nations helmed by corrupt governments. That concludes our conversation for today. Feel free to share your thoughts in comment section below. If you found this content informative, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for the latest updates. Thank you for being here with us.